So today we hear about God having trouble being heard. Now, I don't know about any of you. Have you had trouble being heard ever?
No. Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of experience of being heard. What we are doing towards the end of the month is we're going to be looking at our church and the direction our church is going to take. What is our future for the church? And we're going to have the Reverend Presley Sutherland come and be here with us for that day. And we're going to explore on the Saturday just what it takes. And part of that will require us really listening to one another. And sometimes we're so busy that we forget to listen to one another. There's a poem that Mary Oliver, I don't know if any of you like poets on poetry. Mary Oliver is lovely, and she lives on Cape Cod. She is also a lesbian, and she just is, she's written a lot of really incredible things, and this is one of her poems that I really love. And I think that it will play into what we're doing as we go into the visioning. Meditation is old and honorable. So why should I not sit every morning of my life on the hillside looking into the shining world? Because properly attended to, delight as well as havoc is suggestion. Can one be passionate about the just, the ideal, the sublime, the holy, and yet commit to no labor in its cause? I don't think so. All summations have a beginning. All effect has a story. All kindness begins with the sown seed. Thought buds towards radiance. The gospel of light is the crossroads of indolence or action. So be ignited or be gone. So I think that it's our choice to be ignited or to be gone. And I think that this is a time when we have to find that spirit within us to just live into who we are. We do that all the time personally, living into who we are. And that's a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today when we're talking about being heard. Will you pray with me? God, we give you thanks for bringing us to this place. We give you thanks for the ways you've touched our lives and continue to work in our lives. Help us to be ignited by you. Help us to be called by you and for us to listen for you. So God, help me to listen. Help all of us to listen to what it is you're saying to us today and always. In your many names. Amen. Amen. So can you imagine the people of Israel have decided that they want to have a king. A king is the new flashy thing. A king is the newest iPhone in their day. A king is the newest thing that everybody has to have. The fancy jeans, the fancy car, a king. So the Israelites want a king. And they have God, mind you, but they want a king. And so God says, well, tell them that I don't know about how this king's going to be. This king might not be fair, and I'm always good and fair. And they still decide they want a king. When you want a king, you want a king. And so God says, okay. I think in that moment of not being heard, because God gives everything, and they say, no, they'd rather have a king. They'd rather have a king than God. So they didn't, God was hearing them say, well, yeah, God's been good. Yeah, he got us out of that whole desert thing. And, you know, he did get us, you know, out of that whole slavery situation. However, now we want a king. And God isn't listened to. Repeatedly in the Old Testament, we don't hear God being listened to. The people of Israel don't hear God. God is an intermediary. They don't hear God. They don't listen to what God is telling them to do or how God is telling them to do it. They're quiet. They don't want to hear God. Because God will call them to do difficult things. Whereas if it's a king will just sort of have everything there, they think. Because they think the minute a king happens, there will be all the money they need, all the things that an army in place, because that's what they've seen around them. So to them, a king comes with a certain sort of thing. So poof, when God creates a king, they're expecting an army and money. And they're going to be safe. And they don't have to do anything or take any responsibility anymore. Not so good. We have trouble too, hearing and being heard. Do you ever talk and think that people are just not at all listening to you? Especially small children. They're really good at that.
Our parents.
And sometimes parents, yes. Sometimes parents don't hear us either. You know, it's that being heard. Now, there's lots of stuff that gets in the way. And it's stuff we don't talk about because it feels a little squirmy for us. We know that it's easier in this society for a man to be heard than a woman. Any arguments there? Okay, we know that if you look a certain way, people will listen differently. Right? Okay, so if you are white in this nation, people will listen to you in a different way than they will listen to you if you're a person of color. If you're older, up to a certain point, say 50, they will listen to you in a way. I'm sorry, Tom. You know, and then when you start to go down, you know, you'll lose some of that authority. If you're women, you have to speak a lot louder. You have to have a lot of commotion around you. I've got that down to an art form. Men are busy ducking as my hands are flailing, and I get to talk. But it's that kind of situation. There are lots of things that get in the way of being heard. We're so busy looking at all the reasons, all the stuff that gets in the way, all of those things that we perceive as being important. The color of skin, the gender fluidity. You know, it's those things that really bog us down when we start to look and hear each other. Now, I'm not saying that everybody here does that. I'm saying society as a whole. You know, society as a whole is not fond of certain kinds of people. And a lot of us know that. A lot of us have experienced what it means to be excluded. And it feels rotten. Yes? Yes. Right. And those things are important for us to acknowledge. I got a call from Nancy Wilson this morning because a friend of mine died. His name was Reverend George McDermott. Reverend George, amazing man, probably the most spiritual person I have ever met. He could pray, and you would think that you were listening to he and God having a conversation. He had more grace in his body than I had experienced ever. When I met Reverend George, he was attending a church where I watched people make fun of him. I didn't like it. When I met Reverend George, he hadn't been in active ministry for years. And yet, he was a profoundly spiritual man. People were judging Reverend George by what they saw, and not what they heard, not how they felt. Reverend George had a lot of things that were wrong. He had had polio. He had arthritis really badly. He had taken some really bad falls. He was blind. He had a guide dog. And there was more joy in Reverend George than there were in most of the pastors that I worked with. Reverend George had a way of being touched and touching God. He was both blessing and blessed. He was an amazing man. And it's very seldom that there are those kind of people that are around us that are always like that. And the number of people that never knew it because they didn't bother to talk to him because of the way he looked. They didn't bother. I don't want us to be like that. I don't think we are, but I don't want us to be like that. I want us to be the kind of place where people walk in and they are welcomed just the way they are. That we don't spend time saying, well, just a minute, can I see your portfolio? We'll be in big trouble if we have to see my portfolio. You know, it's those kinds of things. People, we've got to stop looking at things and start listening and hearing people's hearts. We've talked about this over and over again, I know that. And I know it's hard, but I want us to be aware of the kinds of things that come between us and hearing people. Literally listening and hearing people. I have discovered that there are people in this church who are really smart. Really smart, because I listened. I listened to them and I thought, whoa, Lynn is really smart. She's really smart. And I've listened to her, and it's good. You know, Carl, the healed man, amazing stories. You know, you talk to people, you go up to them and you get to know them, and you find out things about them that are miraculous. Quite literally, sometimes miraculous. And you want to hold on to those things. I want a little bit of it to rub off of me, like, you know, here I go, Tinkerbell, and she has all that fairy dust that makes you fly. Well, I kind of want that when I come up and I get close to people like Travis, who can do anything. Amen. I don't know where he learned that stuff. I don't know if he was born knowing how to do some of these things, but you know, I don't know how he knows, but I figure if I get close enough to him, I'll know. So far it's not working so well, but I think that I will know how to do all that stuff. It's that kind of energy from people, that kind of excitement. So as we're looking ahead to our future, what kind of church do we want to be and who do we want to be in it? Do we want to listen to people? Do we want to go up and listen? Just listen. I want to hear what you have to say, because you're pretty smart. I want to hear what you have to say because you make me laugh sometimes. I want to hear what you have to say because maybe you, like Reverend George, are that kind of person that has that connection to God that just shines through you. You know? Maybe you're going to say the one thing to me that I need to hear that's going to change everything. We've got to listen in different ways. And we've got to give people room to speak. Room to speak. That means not just always me. I have lots of room to speak. It doesn't matter what I say when we're looking at the future of this church. It matters what you say. It matters what you want. It matters what God is talking to you about. That's what matters. It's finding that place in you where you're certain that this is where we should be. This is what we should be doing. I can't imagine how we have frustrated God. I think we frustrate God a lot. We've made a few kind of big mistakes along the way. We have been obstinate, stubborn beyond stubborn. We think we have all the answers on our own. I remember it's that you know, when you're a teenager, at that 17 years old, do you remember 17? Well, some of you might not be there yet. For those of you who are heading in that direction, trust me, you're going to know everything you need to know when you're 17 years old. And then as soon as you turn 18, you start to lose it. You start to think, well, gee, I thought I knew it last year, but that wasn't quite right. And by the time you're my age, you know nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. You realize that you're on a constant journey, and everything changes. The things that were true for me when I was young are no longer true. Really, they're no longer true. Those things have changed. Some of them have made this world so much better. This world feels like we can touch other people from around the world, doesn't it? And we can see what's happening around the world and know the world in a really different way, yes? And are we doing anything about it? About the fact that we know because we see it, how many people are hungry, right? Yeah. We know because we see it, what's happening to our planet. Yes, global warming. Narwhals. And yes, we know that there are people that where there's been earthquakes and whole nations need our help. And we know that in Tallahassee, there are people out there who are hungry. And we know. And that's what technology has brought us, a new kind of responsibility. We hear it, but are we ignited to do something? Do we have that burning passion within us to actually do something? Do we talk about it or say yes when we walk out the church door and then just go on and have coffee? Or do we actually do something? It's not going to change. Nothing will change if we don't go out and do something. Nothing will ever change if we just nod and say, yeah, that sounds good. Enjoy yourself as you do it. It doesn't work that way. We have to listen to what God wants us to do. We have to listen to what we hear here. We have to listen in new ways. We have to listen so that people know they are heard. We have to listen so God knows that we have heard. We have to listen. Sometimes I think I'm saying the same thing week after week after week. Likely because I am. And I think it's critical that we hold on to the fact that God has called us to do something. To do something. To make a difference. To bring about heaven on earth. Oh well. Not just to acknowledge that, yes, because I look this way, I have more of a voice than Lynn. Not to just acknowledge that I have more of a voice because I pass as white. Now, if I keep going and they continue to see all my colors, I start to lose a little bit of my ability to change people's minds. But nonetheless, because I look a certain way, I have more power, more privilege. It's not right, is it? It's not right. I pay money to be blonde. It's not right. It's not who I am. I like it though. But still, I get privilege. I acknowledge I have privilege. And if I don't use that privilege, and if I don't do something with that privilege to make a difference, and to make sure that everybody has the same access to everything, then I am abusing my privilege. We need to stand together. When things happen, we need to say enough. We really do. And we don't just need to say it and send some people out to do it. We all need to go out there and do it. We all need to be the ones that are saying enough. We all need to stand together and say, we can make a difference. We can change this. We can really change this. If we can change it here, in this room, if we can think that we all can hear each other in this space, then we can take that out of here and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. There are ways to do it. There are ways to encourage people to listen. If I have privilege and somebody calls on me to speak, I can say, thank you. Step aside and let someone else speak. Not hard. Easy to do. Even if I think I'm brilliant and have way more to say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We need to hear all voices. Not just the ones that get called on because we're loud and visible and we look a certain way. There are times that we need to be quiet and sit down, but to stand with, to be with people who need to speak. Privilege is so hard to deal with, isn't it? It's not like you go out and look for it. It's not like when you're born, you think, okay, I want to be born with privilege. It's not like we wake up and think, okay, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to look like. And this is going to be my family of choice, or my birth family. And I'm going to be born into this wonder and I'm going to be a princess. At least Elliot's going to be a princess. You know, it's like that. We are born and we don't have a choice. Whatever we're dealt with, that's what we deal with. What we do have choices about are how we deal with what we've been given. What we do have a choice about is, do we let God guide us? Do we hear and feel God within us? Can we walk out into the world guided by God and not our egos? I think we're going to be really different if we allow God to guide our privilege, instead of our egos to guide our privilege. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to walk this path. It's hard. It's not easy work. I know we want it to be. I know we don't want to be held accountable. I know we would rather do all sorts of things that actually do this kind of work that's hard, and looking at ourselves in new ways. But we're not going to change anything unless we do it. So, as we look at the future of our church, what kind of church do we want to be? Do we want to be a church that can make a difference? Do we want to listen to God? Yes. That takes a risk. It takes a risk listening to God. Because God will make you squirm and call you to do things you never expected. and take you places that you never imagined, and bless you in ways that are too profound to even talk about. People didn't listen to Reverend George because of the way he looked. And he was amazing. I don't want us to make the same mistake here. I want us to hear each other. I want us to hear God. I want everybody to feel like they matter. That this is their home, their church, and their voice is heard. And then I want us to go out and try and make that real in the world. It's a big call. It's a big mission. And when we hear things about that sometimes God's not even listened to, and we're going to go out and want to be listened to, know that it won't be easy. That's the kind of church I think we want to be. I hope you want to be. I believe we can be. In Jesus' name. Amen.